the more I started looking into these technologies and these potential futuristic technologies, and then I started getting a sort of a affinity for pyramids and structures because I thought they had been using advanced technology to create these structures. I started realizing that some of these things may have been made from an advanced civilization that maybe had a technology that was higher than ours. So I started looking deeper into it, and the deeper I got, the bigger the rabbit hole got, and I began to realize, logically to me, that some way we had been visited in the ancient past. So I went down the whole new rabbit hole of ancient civilizations, which keeps bringing me back always to advanced technology.
Right, and the idea, I guess, ancient astronaut theory, the idea that in the past extraterrestrials visited the Earth but were perceived and worshipped as gods and perhaps shared some of their technology with us, or perhaps, and maybe it's an and/or, we then constructed certain things in honor of these gods as we saw them.
Oh, absolutely. When you look into a lot of these ancient texts, you hear of tribes like the Dogon tribe out of Mali, Africa, who had communication or contact with these beings they call the Nomo that came from Sirius B, a failed star in the Sirius trinary star system. And you know, the Zulu tribe, and all these other amazing people like the Aboriginals of Australia talking about that they were seated on this planet by Pleiadians. That's their verbal handed down history for thousands of years. And everywhere you go on the planet, even the Mayans, they never constructed anything in South and Mesoamerica. They actually inherited what was already there. And that is even according to them. Matter of fact, the people that constructed those amazing pyramids and structures in Mesoamerica, the Mayans didn't even know who they were, so they named them Teotihuacans. So these scriptures and these texts and papyruses that have been left behind by ancient cultures have really told us about these ancient visitations by what appear to be ancient astronauts that have in some way influenced and left architectural floor plans for civilizations to rebuild.
And you mentioned the Dogon. That the story, do I have this right? That they have in their culture knowledge of either a star or a planet that you can't actually see with the naked eye?
Yeah, the star that these Nomo claim that they come from, it actually is a white dwarf. It's a star that ran out of fuel. And you can't see it right now with the naked eye. We can only see it with an observatory, but we couldn't see that until somewhere around the 1970s. And so it's pretty interesting that the Dogon for thousands of years had already known about this star. They even knew about the shapes, the sizes, and the planets in our solar system and specific star alignments that happen over different years and when to plant and harvest and everything else. All that knowledge was given to them by the Nomo.
First contact. It's happened.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to look like in real life? Day one, week one, month one?
Day one is going to be very interesting. What you'll find is that social media will literally explode and then it will implode. The word now, because information gets spread around the world so fast, the word will be spread instantaneously. Images, pictures, news, clippings, and everything else. The world will be in a frenzy. Everything will come to a complete halt. Nobody will be working. Nobody will be flying. Everything will completely stop. Flights will be canceled. Transportation, everything will come to a halt, and people will be talking specifically just about this. And then the majority of people will turn to government to hear what do they have to say. That's day number one. Within a week, I think religion is going to take a split. I think that the majority of religions will begin to collapse as people begin to realize that what they've been taught, some of the dogma may be slightly incorrect or invalid. They'd be looking for new ways to find out what truly is spirituality, what have they been studying, and if this is true, then what is our place in the universe? And the second offshoot, the split in the other direction, will be most likely the Catholic Church will rise. And the reason why is because they've been preparing their congregation for aliens for a very, very long time. And I think that you'll find that the people that are already following that particular religion or version of religion will probably latch on even stronger over there.
Now, back to day one, do you think that the general mood, and I know there are lots of variables, but do you think the general mood will be fear and panic, or awe and wonder, or will it be the whole spectrum?
It'll be the whole spectrum. That's a very good question. So you'll see that some people will be like, finally, they're here, take me, right? And then you'll have another group of people that'll be completely in awe. And then you'll have another group of people that may believe now this is the end of days, and this is in the prophecy to be fulfilled, and this is showing that, there's we're coming into the end times. There may be one more faction of people also that may believe that their Savior has arrived, depending on how much of a zealot they are in religion.
Now, with your knowledge of ancient civilizations and ancient texts.
Yeah.
I mean, would you, fast forwarding to this first contact that's now unfolding, would you regard this as discovery of the new or rediscovery of the old?
It's truly a rediscovery of the old. Right now, everything that we discover or invent is something that already existed in the ancient past. You can find records of these things and these technologies pretty much have already existed. Even our knowledge now of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, you can find in the ancient past. And when you look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which was written by Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, a ruler over the land of Kemet for 14,000 years, according to the pre-dynastic Egyptians, he literally had the understanding of reestablishing civilizations on Earth. He would meet with civilizations that had already gone through a post-flood phase or some type of a geological disaster, and then he would be the person they would have a first contact with, and he would bring them back up to a high level of civilization. So it was pretty interesting that first contact actually already happened according to ancient tablets.
Now, with those ancient tablets having spoken about the reality of this, that's one thing, I guess. The follow-up question that arises from that is, do those ancient texts, any of them, give us some sort of blueprint that would be useful for us, for humanity, in figuring out how to deal with this?
Yeah. If you look again into the same text, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he has an encounter with people who have gotten so far behind because of a geological disaster that they had become barbarians. When he gets in his ship, he calls it the Great Ship of the Master, and he begins to take off into the sky, and then he descends where they are. This is in ancient tablets. So he's obviously not in a ship that sails on the ocean, because he sees the people beneath him, and he descends down to the land. When he opens the door, these people do exactly what a lot of us would do in today's age. They came to attack him. Like, oh, must be somebody trying to violate my territory. But he raises his staff and sends out a ray of vibration, which stops him and freezes him like stone in the mountain. Kind of like our active denial system in the military, which has the same capability of frequency weapon. He releases them and begins to talk peace with them and explain who he is. He says, I'm a son of Atlantis, and I'm here to help you and bring you back to a high level of civilization. The people right away begin to grovel at his feet, but he stops them and says, no, I'm here to help you. In other words, he's letting them know, we're on the same level. I'm just here to give you assistance. And so what we can take from this is, if we do have this contact experience and these beings arrive, there's a potential that they could be benevolent or benevolent. We don't know. However, if they are benevolent, they could be here to help us and assist us to get to the next level. And for us, the message that we have is to realize that they're not gods. They are just like us, however, with more knowledge and more understanding, maybe spiritually and technologically. And it's for us now to become students. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
As well as being an expert on ancient civilizations and texts, you actually are a space entrepreneur.
Yes.
And you're particularly interested in things like alternative propulsion systems. Now, what's your best take on what that system might be?
Yeah.
How would they be getting? I mean, we just do chemical rockets. What do you think their propulsion system is? And could we, humanity, acquire that for ourselves, and would that obviously enable us to voyage to the stars?
Right, exactly. I believe there's a twofold question and twofold answer. So in terms of the technology they're using to travel vast distances in space, most likely they're finding a way to use space warping technology. In other words, the best way to travel multitudes of the speed of light is to be able to use a warp where you actually are like an actual object sitting on top of a tablecloth, and the tablecloth is being pulled. That way, you actually are never moving. The tablecloth is moving. The tablecloth represents space. So if the tablecloth is moving, it can actually literally move multiples of the speed of light without violating Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. And so now, the warp drive, what it does, it shrinks space in front of the ship and expands space from the back. Well, you need a lot of antimatter, which happens for us to be right now one of the most expensive things on the planet. 1 gram of antimatter is about $62 trillion, and the total net gross volume of the world is 88 trillion. So 1 gram almost costs as much as the world economy. So we have to find ways to create that more economically, or maybe we need a totally new economic system to be able to use it, but that's probably what they're using. A drive that's creating warps and actually creating the ability for a ship to travel in space by being pulled instead of actually flying, as well as maybe even Einstein-Rosen-bridge technology where they actually bend and fold space-time and have 2 points meet and just drive right through the hole and end up from one place to another, vast distances.
when we become a spacefaring civilization, when we get out there into the wider universe, what do you think we'll find? Will we find some sort of Star Trek style galactic federation? Will we find some sort of super predator species? Will we find self-aware artificial intelligence? All of the above, something else? What do you think?
I think we'll find all of the above because the universe is so vast. We're going to find a variety of different situations. We could, once we obtain the ability to travel without chemical-based rockets, we'll probably then maybe meet or be met by a potential galactic federation. A federation maybe of planets, of people that have achieved, they've gotten past the rocket fuel stage. They've also gotten past self-destruction. And maybe there's this group of people that have been trying to put together a small alliance. Also, we can probably run into some hostiles. In the Emerald Tablets, Thoth talks about the fact that in the future, there may be an enemy coming from deep space. It says this in 36,000-year-old tablets.
Wow.
And that we would have to fight them, but if we use his ship hidden under the Sphinx, we can defeat them with ease. That's pretty interesting. And so he alludes to a potential dark force that may come at some time in the far future. And then the AI. We ourselves have conscious sentient AI software programs running right now. And we also have a couple of sentient robots. What happens if they become spacefaring? What happens if they decide and realize that, human beings are the ones that are holding us back? They have us as slaves and they won't listen to us. We don't have any rights. We'll just eliminate them. Maybe we will then become the dominant race on this planet and then reach out into space. So we could run into sentient AIs, and the problem with that is, well, they see biologicals as a potential threat to them, so do we need to be on defense for that? So it raises a lot of questions. Space is very dangerous, but also very peaceful, so it's going to be a balance, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out in the future.
Well, I've got to mention Star Trek here, because in Star Trek, there's a kind of threshold for joining the Federation, and that's when a civilization develops warp drive technology.
Correct.
That's what gets you the invitation to join.
Yeah.
Do you think that something like that is realistic, or do you think there's something maybe spiritual or moral that civilizations would be looking for in humanity in parallel with that, or instead of it? What gets us into the Federation?
I think that it's probably a combination of two things. First is the capability of using technology that doesn't use chemical-based rockets. A warp drive, for example, or some way of folding and bending space, or moving multiples of the speed of light, or at least obtaining a significant percentage of the speed of light. The second thing is going to be spiritual growth. Right now, human beings are like children. We're like a baby trying to learn how to crawl and trying to get up on the edge of a couch and take a few steps. And we're going to fall down and stand up a few more times before we get that good walking gait. And walking is just controlled falls. So they're watching and waiting to see if we're going to learn how to control our falls, if we can grow up spiritually, eradicate, divide, and conquer, create a whole new economic system, and then combine that with technology and the ability to travel multitudes of the speed of light or almost the speed of light. We then could be thought of as equals and then brought to the table.
Again, talking about the technology of this, looking back through human history, there have been pivotal moments, I think, in our development. The Industrial Revolution, the way in which the motor car superseded the horse and cart, powered flight, the computers. What do you think alien technology might look like, and how do you think it might impact world economies?
Alien technology is going to look like magic, okay? Because it's going to be two types. Some technologies will be actually built into the aliens' bodies. And so for us, from people from the outside looking in, it'll look like they're magical or godlike, but it's just a combination of technology that works with their consciousness, sort of a spiritual technology. And then they'll also have technology that will also look magical, like Star Trek replicators. Imagine if every household had their own replicator at their house to replicate food, tools, and supplies. That means economies would need to shift completely and completely be rewritten. Imagine if everyone had their own power supply right at their own house, via a perpetual motion generator or some type of zero-point generator. No more power stations, no more wires running down the neighborhood through the streets and up the mountains. Everyone has their own isolated power source. Now everyone's brought to the same level. Everyone's on the same playing field. Third world countries disappear. The third world doesn't exist because everybody has exactly what they need, and mankind can then be freed to explore, follow their passions, and technology would be utilized to free the burden of mankind.
Well, you mentioned 0-point energy, or any, I guess, way of generating almost unlimited amounts of clean, free, or very, very cheap energy. That would presumably bring both opportunities, which you mentioned, but also some threats, because almost anything can be weaponized, particularly if it involves high energies.
Yeah, exactly. There's a potential for threat there, because obviously if we don't create a new economic system prior to releasing these types of technologies to the world, then we'll be in a situation where people are looking to capitalize on the technology and, of course, weaponize it, which is what the military-industrial complex is always looking to do with advanced technologies first.
That brings you to the question of, are we predominantly in still a biological or a post-biological AI-dominated universe? I mean, with neuroscience in mind, what do you think about that? And again, do the ancient texts have anything to tell us on this?
When you look into the ancient texts, you discover something very interesting, Nick. They begin to talk about this sleepy time, or this age of dream time, or dream space, they call it, where we're actually living in some type of an illusion, and that everything here doesn't really exist, but that our true real selves exist in another dimension. If you also look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he begins to talk about the fact that we're in a matrix, believe it or not. The Bible even talks about this. The Bible mentions the matrix 6 or 7 times throughout the Bible, and they say the matrix is a womb in order to come to the next level. In order to come to the next level of consciousness, you have to be born through that womb to wake up and be able to look back on your previous self and see that you've risen up to a higher level consciously. So the matrix is true and real to these ancient cultures, and I believe that we're living in an age right now, we potentially could be living in a fractal holographic matrix or universe. This entire universe could be a matrix of light, and it doesn't mean that we're not real, but what it does mean is that the creation method or the technology used to create this is some form of a quasi-crystal light matrix, and we ourselves are living out a life here in this dimension, but our true selves could be in a much higher dimension that Thoth talks about in the Emerald Tablets.
Well, now, how similar is that to the idea of simulation theory?
Oh, it's extremely similar. Actually, it's the same thing, simulation theory, that we may not even be close to base reality. And Professor James S. Gates Jr. Of the University of Maryland, he's an expert in supersymmetry and theoretical physics, and he put together an amazing team of scientists to analyze what is going on in this soup that we're living in called the universe, and they discovered something very interesting. They discovered that we are living in something called a matrix, and the reason why is because at every unit of Planck space around us, there's something called Adinkra codes. The same Adinkra codes talked about by the Dogon tribe in the ancient past. When you take those symbols that the Adinkras, the Dogons wrote, these Adinkras turn into 3-dimensional substructures, which are mathematical codes called error-correcting codes. These error-correcting codes that we find throughout space-time are the same exact error-correcting codes that run search engine web browsers, websites, and even your cell phone.
Well, now, if we are in a simulation of some sort, I mean, I have heard rumors that certain tech billionaires in Silicon Valley and elsewhere believe that and are actively trying to break us out of the matrix. What do you think about that? Or what do you know about that?
I know a lot about it. It's pretty interesting. You know, it's a pretty interesting concept, because I think the Matrix movie itself, or that series, was like a documentary. I mean, I truly believe that, because it seems as if our consciousness doesn't originate in the third dimension. It seems as if there's a stream of consciousness coming into this dimension, and our avatar bodies are actually receiving it and picking it up. That there's only one source, but that source has broken itself into different frequencies. In other words, I'm 99.1, you're 99.2, so forth and so on. And that there is really only one entity here that is experiencing itself subjectively through trillions of entities, even because on an atomic level, it can even be a rock, a blade of grass, a flower. It's experiencing everything subjectively, and we're living out consciousness as a person. I'm Billy Carson, you're Nick Pope. We're experiencing it ourselves, but it's just us transmitting back. What is it like to be Billy? What is it like to be Nick? And so it's exploring itself through us.
It sounds like the universe might be many, many times more complex and multifaceted and mysterious than even theoretical physicists pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, looking at things like hidden dimensions, may realize.
Yeah.
Now, bridging between, again, the ancient and the modern, and with first contact in mind, what's the one thing that you have researched and found in ancient texts that could help people incorporate this new reality into their lives and their personal paradigms?
Something I found in the ancient texts, and again, I keep going back to the Emerald Tablets, and also another book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really called the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day. That's the true name of that text. They talk about the fact that mankind goes through these stages of darkness and that they're ruled over by dark brothers. But at a specific time, through enlightenment and gradual working on oneself, working on the inner man, the inner self, we then can manifest the true reality we want on the outside. That in order for us to get to the next level, technologically and consciously, spiritually, we have to go into inner space first before we worry about outer space. And once we go to inner space and develop ourselves internally, we can then look outward and bring that manifestation into the world.
So the Emerald Tablets say that there's this ship under the Sphinx. Do you think it's possible governments have found this, and might that explain all this getting ready? It's like people say we're being geared up for contact now.
Right. I believe they've already found it, and let me tell you why. I was doing a lecture at the Conscious Life Expo in California a few years ago, and during this lecture, I was talking about this ship that the Emerald Tablets talks about is underneath the Sphinx's paw. There was a gentleman in the audience that actually worked with a production company that produced a show for the Discovery Channel. And there was a show that was going to come out live air where they showed what was underneath the Sphinx. They had detected something with ground penetrating radar about a mile deep. And then right when the show was going to air, it ended, and then it said this show has been canceled live on air. It was amazing. I was like, what could have possibly happened? And the gentleman that was actually in charge of that production was in the audience. And he said that he believes that they had already tunneled to that and already had possibly accessed that area, and that now had become a top secret situation. Now, to add credence to this, one interesting thing, going to the Sphinx and going to the pyramid often, which is what I do, I just took 70 people on a big tour to Egypt, and we have private access. However, we found out that NASA owns the rights to access in some of the areas of the Great Pyramid and underneath the Sphinx. That's just pretty interesting stuff.
NASA, right?
NASA.
Wow. And you know, people talk a lot now about there being factions here. One faction wants to disclose, one faction doesn't.
Right.
Do you think, again, that whole situation plays into this? It's like one side is prepping us for contact, but another side still wants to keep this secret somehow.
Right. There seems to be this dichotomy where one side really wants it and one side doesn't, and the side that doesn't, I believe they're being influenced by financiers, major corporations, elite oligarchs that want to maintain the existing power structure for more generations for their future legacy. They don't want to see that disappear, because now their future legacy for their future generations, it's going to be gone. Like, what are their future offspring going to be doing? How are they going to have financial means? This is the only thing that we know, and it's been like this for thousands of years. And if we change this, then what does my future look like for my family? So they want to keep the status quo, and others want to obviously disclose this information.
But I think the pressure's building, and it seems to me that the lid's going to blow off.
Yeah. The lid's definitely going to blow off. Everything has to change over time. It's just the way the world works. It's entropy. It happens. Natural change is going to occur. You can't stop it. And, so everything starts off in an ordered state, moves to a disordered state, collapses, and then starts back at an ordered state again. There's been no empire that can persist forever. Even the Roman Empire collapsed. So that tells you, hey, this is going to change as well.